Welcome to Worldwide Business. I'm Kathy Ireland. Advancements in technology have opened the doors to innovative payment options for retailers and their customers. However, the need for payment security is now stronger than ever. ACCEO offers merchants a trusted payment solution. Vice President of Business Development and Strategic Alliances for Payment Solutions, Joey Vaccaro, is here to tell us more. Welcome, Joey.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Well, Joey, obviously security is important when it comes to payment solutions, but can you please tell us what is the most concerning thing for merchants?
Well, you know, Kathy, it starts with a very basic fact, is that consumers just will not shop at a store where they feel there's an abnormal risk of their credit card numbers or personal data being compromised. So think about a merchant that ends up in the headlines with a security breach. That can be totally crippling for their entire operation.
Sure.
And it doesn't cost thousands. In some cases, it's cost millions of dollars. There was one merchant that actually reported that the security breach cost them over $100 million. So what keeps retail executives awake at night is certainly a security breach. So by far, security is one of the #1 concerns when it comes to payment.
And so how is ACCEO addressing these challenges?
Well, one of the things that we did was we created what's called a decentralized architecture. So rather than having this one point of failure, that if something goes wrong, your entire system is poisoned, what we did was we installed our software on each register. So if there's a problem, it was only one cash register that gets affected. So merchants found that really appealing in the US market and abroad. And so, but that's only one facet of security. Security really has, multiple components. So what we do is we get involved as well. We were one of the first to enable something called end-to-end encryption, where your credit card number never got stored at the retail location. So the minute you entered your card or dipped your card into a reader, that credit card information was encrypted, and it was only decrypted at the acquiring bank. So that was another security element. And we consider ourselves also leaders in EMV technology, which we can talk a little bit about in terms of how that affects the overall security of payments.
And could you please explain EMV?
Certainly. So EMV is an acronym that stands for Europay, MasterCard, and Visa. So they were involved in the international specifications, and what EMV did, it was a major technological advancement. And maybe I can just explain to you real quick by showing you on a credit card. So in the old technology, there was a magnetic stripe on the card, and that magnetic stripe contained various credit card information. The problem with magnetic stripe is that the card could be easily copied. And so what would happen is there was an exposure to fraud. So if I lost my credit card and somebody picked up the credit card and they just scribbled my signature and they swiped it at a retailer, they can put through a fraudulent transaction. So what EMV did, it created this chip technology where you've got this mini or microcomputer chip that's on the credit card, so very difficult to copy the card. Now, if I lost my credit card, someone would have to have my PIN number to be able to put through a transaction. So if they dipped the card, the reader would prompt them, please enter your PIN. Without my PIN, they could no longer process the payment transaction. EMV was a major upgrade from a technological point of view and was really instrumental in reducing fraud.
Joey, could you please share some of the history behind ACCEO and what do you offer your customers?
What we do is we want to take the headache of payment away from them, and payment has become extremely complicated. So if you look at the various players in the payment space, you've got an acquiring bank who processes the payment transactions. You might have a terminal that is going to accept the credit card or debit card payment. And you also have POS software that has your inventory and has pricing information. And in the middle of that, we tie it all together. So we're called a middleware software, and our job is to make sure that the payments are secure, that the customer experience is smooth and prompt when they're at checkout.
Joey, what will happen to merchants who have not adopted EMV?
Picture yourself, you've got this beautiful home and you install this state-of-the-art alarm system. You haven't made the criminals disappear. What you've done is you've invited them to go over to your neighbor's house who doesn't have that state-of-the-art alarm system. So when Europe implemented EMV, we saw credit card fraud double in the United States. Now, the United States is starting to adopt EMV, but what's happening is the merchants that lag behind, the fraud will end up migrating to those merchants. So it creates additional exposure to them. Right. And recently there's been something called the liability shift, that there are chargebacks. If you accept swipe magnetic stripe payments and you don't accept chip card payments and there's fraud, you as a merchant are now responsible for that fraud. So there's a significant cost for those merchants who are going to be lagging behind in terms of this EMV wave.
And can you please tell us how payment technology affects the customer experience?
Sure. There was a really interesting story. I remember one merchant telling me that on Black Friday, which was their biggest day for sales, and it was people lining up and the lineups were building up, and then lo and behold, he started seeing people throwing merchandise on the ground and just walking out of the store. They were totally frustrated because they had to wait in line so long at checkout. He implemented a mobile tablet, which he equipped his sales clerks with, and while people were standing in line, he was able to check them, the clerks were able to check them out and send them an email receipt of their store transaction. They actually saw store sales increase by 15%.
And Joey, can you please explain why a merchant would want to adopt contactless payments?
Sure, so just to quickly define contactless payments is we're saying that the chip on the card will not come in contact with the reader. So you would basically tap and pay. When you're tapping, you're not necessarily inserting a PIN or a signature, so a little bit less secure, but very interesting for low-ticket items where there's large volume. And what's interesting is exactly that same technology. If you want to use your phone, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, to tap and pay, it's the same technology that accepts the contactless payments.
And can you please tell us about the value-added enhancements that you've built into Tender Retail?
Sure. So, when we look at value-added enhancements, one of them that's very popular is anything to do with loyalty and gift cards. So we've integrated to some of the largest loyalty and gift card programs in the United States. And so customers are able to either redeem or accumulate points, or the merchant is able to process their gift cards.
What about customer feedback? Can you talk about how you're addressing that?
Sure. There's a company out of the UK called True Rating that decided to be a little bit innovative in the way they treated customer feedback. What they did was they scrolled a question as you're checking out in a retailer. They might ask you a question like, would you rate your customer experience today? And on the PIN entry device, you would punch in 0 to 9. And they all of a sudden had 88% response rate, which was absolutely tremendous. And they were able to share valuable feedback with the retailer saying, you've got a problem with your Los Angeles store. And they could also drill it down to the actual clerk that was servicing the customers. So we partnered with True Rating. We integrated our solution with them, and they're a great management team, and we're really glad to be associated with them.
Joey, can ACCEO Tender Retail be used by small merchants?
I often get the question, do you have a watered down version for the smaller merchants? We have the same version that we provide to a major retailer that has 20,000 registers. It's exactly the same solution that's offered to the smaller merchants. And we've become a little bit innovative, and we believe very strongly in our partnerships. We've partnered with Epson, and what we've done is, because space is always a premium at a retail outlet, we've actually put our software within an Epson printer. And we can pre-certify that package to give the merchant a very easy path to EMV. Other partners include companies like ID Tech, who we're working with to also facilitate the migration to EMV. So we're very excited about those partnerships. And they're all in California, so it makes it a fun trip.
Well, could you please discuss how ACCEO Tender Retail empowers merchants?
Basically, enabling them by working with all the different acquiring banks, working with all of the different PIN entry device manufacturers and POS software manufacturers. We allow the merchant now to select what is the best solution.
So can you please walk us through the process? What happens once a Tender Retail is deployed?
So what we did was we invested large sums of money in a solution called the ACCEO Tender Retail Manager. And so the retailer, what they can do is they can remotely manage all of their retail stores and point of sale. So they can push out updates of software, they can have the acceptance of new credit cards. So really an essential tool in the efficient management of the total payment solution.
So before we close, Joey, could you please share what you envision for ACCEO's future?
Well, I think that we want to continue on the path of being the payment expert, take that headache of all the complexity of payment away from the retailer. We're looking at continuing to expand our growth in the global markets. I think we've got some really key strategic partnerships with companies such as MasterCard and Visa, and we work closely with many of the acquiring banks, everything that relates to that omni-channel payment solution and really working for the merchants.
Well, Joey, it certainly seems that ACCEO is empowering retailers with payment technologies that they can trust. Congratulations, and thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been great.
Thank you. For Worldwide Business, I'm Kathy Ireland. Thank you for watching.